Do not spend money on marketing. I'm going to just say that again. Don't spend money on marketing. Oh, there's so many amazing ways to actually spend money or to actually acquire customers without spending money.
Let's dive into some traps. Like, is there a particular trap that maybe you've experienced more than once?
You are not your customer. And it's stuck with me because it's totally true, which is like we come into this because we as entrepreneurs have identified a problem. But what we have to understand is we are not the customer. You got to go out and talk externally to the customers. No matter how much you think you're a subject matter expert in what you're solving, you got to talk to other people.
Quick thank you to our sponsor, The Gents Place. What is The Gents Place? Imagine a country club meets speakeasy meets barbershop. If you're interested in owning and running a business that you can actually be proud of, one built with confidence, community, and consistency, this is worth a look. With top location performance exceeding $1.4 million in gross sales, they are at the cutting edge of their industry and franchising in 30 plus states across the U.S. If that lights a fire for you, go to tgpfranchising.com, complete the form, and book an intro call to learn more about owning your very own location of The Gents Place. Okay, guys, welcome back to the Untrapped Entrepreneur. I don't even know what episode this is, Dave, but I've been doing so many of these, so it's episode something. But Dave Scott is here with us, and we've been trying to get together for a while. So, Dave, good to see you. Thanks for coming on the show.
Happy to be here.
Dave probably gave me the shortest bio of any guest, which is great. So, I mean, congrats on this. It was like, I think it's 4 words: serial entrepreneur and pioneering marketer, which doesn't do it justice. I've seen your LinkedIn and you have like 75 things on there, and you've gone to some great schools and done some amazing things in business. So we'll have to dive into that a little bit deeper.
I probably should have said Dave Scott, been through some stuff.
Yeah, that's right. But I appreciate you coming on. And why don't you just, before we start talking about what our audience really wants to hear is like, you know, all the mess ups, the traps, whether you've experienced them themselves or seen it. Just give us, you got to give us more than just serial entrepreneur and pioneering marketer. So give us a little bit of a bio on some things that you've done in business.
Oh gosh, if you must. No, I'm happy to talk about it. So my name is Dave Scott. I'm currently the CEO of Evil Genius Games, which is actually my 4th startup. We make tabletop role-playing games as well as a SaaS-based platform, which allows you to play these games virtually anywhere around the world. Started out as a computer science undergrad, MBA from Wharton. Started as a management consultant, went to do management consulting for a while for a company called Boston Consulting Group. Then I started my first company, which was an e-commerce company that sold entertainment licensed merchandise for movie studios. We were the e-commerce backend for like Warner Brothers, Lucasfilm, Marvel Entertainment. Sold that company, jumped into my second company, which was a marketing automation platform called MarketFish, where we actually helped, blue chip B2C brands build a customer acquisition programs online. At our height, we were doing like $500 million in media spend through the platform with blue chip clients like Disneyland, Norwegian Cruise Lines, ADT Home Security. Sold that company in 2018, jumped into my third company. Actually, this is funny. I actually thought I'd retire and never do another company again. So
we all say that.
And so I moved to New York and started doing stand-up comedy, thinking that was going to be my next career.
Oh my God.
And then that launched my third startup, which was called Laughly, which was an on-demand streaming comedy platform. We had content from over 4,000 comedians, everyone from Dave Chappelle to Jerry Seinfeld. And then in 2018, I sold that company to Kevin Hart and Lionsgate. And then I also worked for large companies as well. So I was VP of marketing at Twitter for a while. I was VP of marketing operations, strategy, and analytics at Amazon Web Services. And then now I'm on my 4th company, the company I'd never say I'd ever start. And guess what? I still make the exact same. You think I'd be good at this by now? Mm-hmm. I'm actually horrible at it. I keep making the exact same mistakes or different mistakes. Ben, I've made every mistake in the world, and for some reason, can't seem to learn from them.
You're glutton for punishment, man. You just keep going back for more. Well, that's don't feel bad because everybody that I interview is in the same place. They keep going back for more, and hopefully you just get a little bit incrementally better. You know,
I
you
get,
never
yeah,
perfect it.
incrementally better. That's probably a good way to phrase it for sure.
Yeah. Well, I know that one, you have an amazing resume, so thank you for indulging us with some more detail than just, entrepreneur and marketer. Um, let's dive into some traps. Like, is there a particular trap that maybe you've experienced more than once? We talk about doing the same thing over and over again, expecting different results, but anything that you've found you just kind of repeat over and over again? Any thoughts around that?
Well, you could probably imagine that as a serial entrepreneur with so many startups under my belt, I do a lot of coaching, and a lot of the coaching is sort of what did I do wrong that you should not do. And I think there are
Hmm.
three traps that I tend to gravitate towards talking about as things that I hope everyone would avoid, right? The number one is the spin trap. Number two is the customer acquisition trap. And number three is the you are not your customer trap. So I think those are the three that I go after.
Okay, dive into let's dive into all three. Come on, man. If we're going to give people some value here, let's start
Let's
with
do
number
it.
one.
Yeah.
Let's start with
So
the
the
spin
first one
trap.
is, first one is spending money, right? And this is what I've learned the hard way, right? You get your first round in. My first round for this company was probably about 1.1 million or something like that. And what you want to do immediately is spin the heck out of it, right? You want to hire fast, hire a bunch of people. You want to put money into marketing and branding. Don't do it. Don't do it. Like the road to product market fit is so long. And when you think you've nailed product market fit, you're probably still 6 months to a year away from it. And so having dry powder in the bank is always useful. And so, it's so funny when I went to Wharton, my first finance company, my first finance class. The Back then we had chalkboards, and the professor came up and wrote on the chalkboard, "Cash is king." And like that was it. That was like the lesson of the first day, right? And it's so true, right? Is when you're sitting on cash, it's so much more important and it's so powerful than when you're hunting for cash. And as an entrepreneur, you're going to be spending a lot of your time hunting for cash, but doing it when you have cash in the bank is very, very different than doing it when you don't have cash in the bank.
How,
So
how do you stay disciplined though? Because you build out the business plan, you build out the source and use of funds. You actually get your first win. You need 1 million, you raise 1 million. You know exactly how you're going to spend. That's why they gave you the money actually, because you knew exactly how you're going to spend it. Like, how do you have discipline around not spending it all right away?
yeah, it's that frugal gene, right? I mean, so you got here because you were frugal. So you got to a point where you had an MVP and you were eating ramen and you were doing everything yourself. And then I think ultimately people will want to sort of move away from that and start eating sushi, right? But you know, really focus on the things that are most painful. So, if you have a staff, you guys are all wearing multiple hats, sit around and go, okay, which one of you guys is at the breaking point? Let's take something off your hat rather than being like, hey, now we can hire 10 people. You probably don't have to. I'll give you an example. I'm not only CEO, but I'm also the key product manager. And I'm also the finance guy, and I'm also the top sales guy, and I'm also the marketing guy, right? So when I get money in next, I'm going to first focus on, well, what's that one thing that either I don't do very well or that's breaking me? And that's the first person I'm going to hire. I'm not going to hire all five of them and take them all off my plate at the same time.
Yeah, yeah, makes sense. Okay, next trap. What's next?
Marketing. Don't spend money on marketing. This is a marketing guy.
What, dude? You're like writing books on marketing. You got to explain this to me.
Do not spend money on marketing. I'm going to just say that again. Don't spend money on marketing. Honestly, like it's so funny because I spent my entire career spending money on marketing, and people think that the first thing they need to do is start acquiring customers, and they start hiring these agencies and putting money into Google AdWords and Facebook ads and stuff like that. Then you're surprised when all of a sudden you're actually acquiring customers at $1,000 per customer and your product costs 20.
Hmm.
And then you're over your skis. You burn through a ton of cash. Guess what? Facebook will take your money all day long. You'll burn through a bunch of cash and you'll realize that you have no idea why the customer is not converting on your page, and why your why your customer is not using the product later, or why they're not onboarding. There's 1,000 things that can go wrong in that customer journey. And my guess is that you probably haven't figured them all out yet.
Yeah.
So you got to go super slow on that process, really sort of learn through it before you spend money. And there's so many amazing ways to actually spend money, or to actually acquire customers without spending money.
Man, if you
What about,
master conversion, right? Like if you can figure the conversion part out, then you dump money into that, no?
yeah, and it's hard, right? So you're getting someone, and so by the way, I've written a book on this, so I don't want to rehash the book, but like,
Mm.
there are four psychological stages of a buyer, right? It's the AIDA curve. It's attention, interest, decision, and action. And so the buyer's got to get through all of those in order to actually do something that's going to be subscribed to your website or buy your product or what have you. And that process can certainly be compressed or extended depending on what sort of industry you're in, but you got to understand what that flow is, right? So they see an ad on Facebook. How many times do they decide see it before they click on to your landing page? Do you have a landing page? What does your landing page say? What's the conversion on the landing page? Guess what? A form that's a form that has six or less um, questions on it actually performs 10 times better than if you have seven or more questions on it. It's that kind of stuff, right? Then they actually complete the form and they get into your website. Maybe it's a freemium or whatever. And now all of a sudden they've got to start using it. And what's the onboarding path? And how long does that process take? And how long does it take for them to get using the product? And then they got to come back for day 2, and then day 7, and then day 30. And only then do you really have a sticky customer, right? So there's lots that goes into that. It's a lot of learning. It's a lot of instrumentation. And if you go too quickly to start spending money to sort of go and build the top of the funnel, you may lose out on the bottom of the funnel, and that's ultimately what matters, which is how many of them stick around for day 30.
Yeah, that makes so much sense. We get so excited when we drive that first person to the website and they fill out the form. We just want to do that a million times. It makes us feel good that a million people have given us, their information. But we could do a lot of damage if you're not investing in the further down the funnel, right? You have
Yeah,
a bunch of people there that tasted it and they don't like what they tasted and they're gone.
yeah, and then you're sitting on an email list of 30,000 people that with an open rate of 12% and a click-through rate of 0.5%. I mean, this could be a whole show.
Yeah.
But stop spending money on marketing. Now, I actually had a mentor who's the CEO of NutriSense, which is doing extremely well. And he actually made the commitment that he wasn't going to spend a dime on marketing until he got to $100,000 of ARR just through natural means. So
Interesting.
he set his own goal for that, which I love. And the way that he did it, sorry, $100,000 in MRR. And the way that he did it was he used social media influencers. So he went down, he compiled a list of all the social media influencers in the health and fitness space, which is where NutriSense is. Started at the bottom to the inconsequential ones and said, can you talk about my product on your show? And then as he got more success, he worked his way up to the point where the people who were at the top of the list were asking him if they can get products so they could talk about his product on the show. So, that's a really creative way to grow. If it's not that influencer and then you're talking about B2B, maybe it's a channel partner, maybe it's Forrester, maybe it's Gardner, but there's someone out there that can amplify your story in a credible way. And you may not necessarily have to spend a ton of money in order to do it.
Makes sense. Trap number 3, something about the customer. Yeah.
Yeah. So,
The customer's important or something like that.
yeah, maybe. The funny thing about it is so day number 2 at Wharton, in my product company, the professor went on the chalkboard and he wrote, "You are not your customer." And it stuck with me because it's totally true, which is like we come into this because we as entrepreneurs have identified a problem that we think we know how to solve, and then we go out and solve our problem. But what we have to understand is we are not the customer. You got to go out and talk externally to the customers. No matter how much you think you're a subject matter expert in what you're solving, you got to talk to other people. And so I'm actually a proud alumnus of Techstars, and I thought I'd had everything figured out, right? Like I've been playing these types of games that I've been making since I was 11.
Mhm.
You know, how am I not an expert in this product? And the first thing they made me do is they made me talk to 10 customers. I'm like, why are you gonna make me talk to customers? Are you kidding me? Blah blah blah. It was so enlightening. Like I was blown away by how they were consuming my product was entirely different than what I assumed they were, what I assumed that they were consuming my product for. It was totally
From a
enlightening.
practical standpoint, and I totally agree with you, but from a practical standpoint, what's the best way to do that? Is that an email survey, text survey? Is it in person? Is it Zoom? And like any standardization around the data you collect? 'Cause you only have so much time with the customer. They only have so much time to give you. Like, how do you get the most value out of those interactions?
Yeah, and I do think there's lots of different ways. So, like my previous company, when we were working on design and UX, our UX designer would sit in Starbucks and go, "Hey, I'll buy you a coffee if you look at this." And everyone was like, "Oh, I'll take a free coffee." And they'll sit down and you go through some UX stuff. And that was super creative. Surveys are fine. What we learned and practiced in Techstars was jobs to be done. And if you're not familiar with that
Mm.
framework, the very famous framework that was built by a Harvard professor, and it's all about trying to understand what problem is the customer trying to solve with your product. So what job is it doing for them, right? So coffee, the job that coffee is hired for is to make me more productive in the morning. The job that my car is hired for is to get me from point A to point B safely. So you got to figure out what is the job that your customer is hiring your product for. And we did that through a series of hour-long interviews. So we took a lot of time with the customer directly, asking them very, very specific questions, not necessarily about our product, but sort of like, what are you doing now that when you don't have my product? And how is it affecting you? And what's right and what's wrong with what the product you're currently hiring to solve that? Um,
Pay them for that time. Is that good or bad to compensate or provide some value?
Yeah, so it's interesting because one of my biggest mentors is a guy named Phil Kotler, who is I don't know if you ever take Marketing 101 course, but everyone gets the book called The Fundamentals of Marketing. That was Phil Kotler's book, right?
Mm.
And he talks a lot about this, and he's a big believer in small to no incentives. Because what ends up happening is the bigger the incentive, the more incentive that the customer has to placate you in
Yeah.
the interview process. So he actually did a study between $100 gift card and a $5, and a $5 Starbucks card. And the $5 Starbucks card gave you more authentic answers than the $100 Amazon gift card.
That makes so much sense. Just hearing that, if someone came to me with a $5 Starbucks card, it sounds like they want some genuine feedback, but the $100 card sounds like they're just trying to pay me for my time.
Well, not only that, but if you're presented with a $5 gift card, you're not going to do it for the $5. The $5 is going to be a nice sweetener, but you're going to do it because you genuinely want to give feedback. Whether or not you give a crap about the product, you're going to take the $100 gift card, right?
Yeah.
So you're going to take it even if you don't have any genuine feedback or whether or not you really use the product. You're going to be incentivized to try to figure out a way to take that product.
Yeah, because $100 is valuable. So I may as well take it if it's only for X minutes of my time. I actually think I did that to business like in the last year or two. It
Oh,
was
you do it
just
all the time.
like a spam email, and I'm like, well, it's $100 and it's like 5 minutes. Like, okay, well, that's pretty good, you know.
Yes,
I made good money, but that's pretty good return on my time. I'll do that.
yeah, I'm an expert in harvesting silicon for chips. Why
Yeah.
not? I'll give it a shot.
When you were talking about this third one, I don't know if it's Steve Jobs, but certainly it's been, the concept of this has been around for a long time about not asking your customer what their needs are. They don't know, like they don't know what they need. And I think it was Jobs. It's like if you asked them they needed an iPhone, they would have never come up with that themselves. How do you balance that as a founder? You do need that feedback, but also how do you your intuition, like you said, you've been developing these things since you're 11 years old. Like you may know better than your customer what their needs are?
Yeah, so it's actually based on a very famous Harvard case study, which is a carrion call as to what not to do. That Harvard case study actually turned into a Simpsons episode. So I don't know if you remember the Simpsons episode where they tried to ask him what kind of car he wanted, and then they built the exact same thing that he asked for, and it was the ugliest car on the planet, right? It's the Homerville.
Oh gosh, I haven't
Um,
seen. I'm gonna watch that
you
though. I'm
have to
taking a
go.
note.
It's awesome. Yeah. So basically, the way the case study works is that they did a bunch of surveys with customers, sort of saying, "What's your ideal car?" And they came in. They said, I want 2 cup holders. I want 3 rows. I want this. I want that. And then they went to go build it. It was the ugliest, most least cost effective car they could actually produce. So then they went back to the drawing board, and what they said was they were asking questions, but then they were making implicit assumptions based off the questions. So if someone said they needed 2 cup holders, they weren't saying the key difference is that they weren't asking how many cup holders. They came back and said, why do you feel like you need 2 cup holders? And then so they were able to get to the root of the problem, not necessarily how the customer picked the solution. And then that's where we came up with the minivan. The minivan came out of that exercise.
Interesting. Who knew you could learn so much from The Simpsons?
Well, it's actually quite prophetic if you watch earlier seasons.
That's awesome. All right. Well, this is like you're totally out of line saying you can't spend on marketing when you're writing marketing books. Okay, so I got to challenge you on that. But I watched some videos before we hopped on about lead acquisition. About acquiring new clients. So now you've got to go in the opposite direction. You got to tell us a little bit more about why marketing is important. Like what gap are you filling in that space? Because we do know attracting customer, we have to all attract customers one way or the other. Okay, how do you balance that? Don't invest in marketing, but you've got to do some marketing stuff.
Yeah, I mean, there'll be a point in time where you would have figured out the customer journey. And you would have figured out how to convert a lead into a customer. All I'm saying is that takes a lot longer than a lot of people think it does, right? Because they don't consider everything from the first time I've ever heard of you all the way down to the day 30 retention. And that customer journey needs to be figured out before you spend a significant amount of dollars into your marketing program. And it's not easy. Even I still have a hard time instrumenting that whole process and having eyes on that entire process and how it actually is working through. So I think that's just my caution, right? But once you actually get to the point where you are building, you're spending money on marketing and so on and so forth. For me, it's really about the right message at the right time. So, and I say this in my book and a couple other, in a couple articles I've written, right? Which is like, if you've never heard of my product for the first time, you have no idea what it does. And my first call to action is use this code to take 30% off. I'm going to be like, why am I going to take 30% off? I have no idea what the product does.
Yeah.
And so it is the right message at the right time. If they're in that attention phase, it's all about education. What does your product do? What problem does it solve? Why is it better than the substitute products I'm using today? Right. And then if they're in the interest phase, it's all about getting them excited, right? Which is like, how can it affect my life? How can it solve this specific problem? How can I integrate that into my day to day? How does it get me a promotion? And then in the decision phase, it's really about comparison level data, right? Which is, how do I integrate this into my current workflow? How do I rip and replace this from what I currently have? What are the specific features that I'm going to get that I don't already have, and how am I going to put those features to use? And then action is all about, how do I buy, right? Where do I get that 10% off coupon? How do I get a quote? How do I engage the salesperson? How do I ask very specific questions that I need to go before I actually put this in front of my boss? And so understanding where they are in that curve is going to really be mission critical on how you conduct your lead generation campaign.
Do you feel like, having raised money and brought on partners and things like that, do you feel like you need to have all that figured out in order to attract capital? Or like, at what level do you need to get to in order for a potential investor to say this is worth buying into?
Investors are super weird, man. Like I think that some investors do expect you to have that, but I think that if the investor expects you to have it, they're fooling themselves, right? It's almost like me presenting you a 5-year pro forma.
Yeah, sure.
It's almost always going to be wrong, but like there are still investors out there that are like, can I see your 5-year projections? Sure, why not?
Yeah.
It's
You
going to
seen a
project.
hockey stick? Yeah, it looks just
Yeah,
like
yeah.
this. Yeah.
Hockey stick in year 3, like, right? I mean, like it's so manufactured because we just don't know. We don't know a lot. And so any smart investor would really sort of think about like, how is this person taking the practical approach? Not necessarily do they've got it all figured out.
Yeah.
Unless you're in a growth stage, right? You're series
Sure.
B through E, then yeah, you do want them to have that
You're
figured
just
out.
adding fuel to the fire at that point. Yeah. I'm going to drop $1 in. I want 10 to come out, and
Right.
there's a proven system.
Yeah.
I know you're spending time running your own businesses, but you're also putting great content out there, a couple of books, you've got coaching, you're doing some speaking. How can people kind of interact with you and extract some value out of all of your experience, and like how much time are you spending on some of those activities?
Well, I probably need to spend more time. I gotta tell you, I've got a busy job. I'm the CEO of Evil Genius Games, and it is a full-time effort. And then I'm also just recently interim CEO of a publicly traded AI company called Versus. So I don't have a lot of time to put a lot of really great content out like I'd like to, but certainly stay tuned to my LinkedIn. As well as you could find my books on Barnes and Noble or Amazon or wherever books are sold. But yeah, I love this. This is the part that I love is educating and mentoring. My mother was a professor, so I think I've got that gene in me. And I think once I retire, I'll be a professor again. I've taught it. I've taught at a couple of universities, but I love imparting this type of knowledge. If anyone could sort of avoid the mistakes that I've made 4 times now, by all means, I'm happy to help out.
Yeah, that's awesome. Well, I appreciate you spending time with me, especially taking on the new gig at Versus, and I didn't know that was a publicly traded company. So you got even more scrutiny around doing that job, right?
Yeah, I have an earnings call tomorrow.
Oh man, oh, is that going to be your first one?
First one, yeah,
Okay,
yeah. I mean,
all
listen,
right.
I'm stepping in as an interim CEO. I'm currently a board member. I've got 30 years of experience sort of supporting people who've ran public companies, both through, Amazon, Twitter, and then of course I've worked for other companies as well, like Oracle and PeopleSoft. So I've been around it, but this will be my first time in the hot seat.
Yeah. Wow. Good luck,
Thank
man.
goodness I've got an amazing executive team that has done this before with decades of experience, and just make sure that we put our best foot forward.
Yeah. Awesome. Awesome. Well, brother, I really appreciate you coming on, especially considering your busy schedule. Will you let people know? I know you've got your hands full, but the books are out there, right? At least one of them. Are both books out?
Yeah, so the one that's still available is The New Rules of Lead Generation, which can be found on Amazon or anywhere books are sold.
Okay. All right. So check out the book, and when your time frees up, maybe we'll see you out there speaking and coaching and being on some more podcasts. But I appreciate you coming on. And last thing, just I know you've got a website somewhere, but you tell us where's the easiest place to find kind of up-to-date content.
Oh gosh, you could probably do scottonmarketing.com.
Okay.
All one word, spelled correctly.
Okay, or David T. Scott on LinkedIn. You're so formal on LinkedIn, man.
Well, the only reason that that's the case is because there's so many David Scotts. In fact, there were 5 David Scotts in my university.
Oh my
So,
gosh.
so there's a lot of David Scotts in the world, and apparently Dave Scott and David Scott are already taken from SEO purposes.
Yeah, well,
Congressmen, scientists, triathlons. I mean, who are these guys?
preaching the choir, man. I mean, Ben Davis and Dave Scott. Like, you can't get any more all-American than that. So,
You're here.
All right, man. Well, hey, thanks for coming on. Great to chat with you, and we'll talk to you again soon.
Cheers. Bye.
See ya.